Welcome into the Ochsner Health Podcast Studio for another episode of NewOrleans.Football presented by PJ's Coffee. We're coming to you from Veterans Memorial Boulevard, right next door to Matt Bauer's state-of-the-art Ford dealership. Check him out today. Get yourself a new Bronco. He'll get you the best price, the best customer service, the best car buying experience that you can have. Since the last time we talked to you guys, the Saints have made a couple moves. They got rid of Dennis Allen. They traded Marshon Lattimore. We're going to talk about all that stuff, what it means, where the team goes from here, what the future holds, what Rizzi ball is going to look like, all that and much more right after this quick word from our sponsors. Ochsner Health is proud to team up with the NFL and the New Orleans Saints' Crucial Catch mission to fight cancer and save lives. Crucial Catch helps more people access the tools they need to catch cancer early and promotes prevention and early detection of cancer.
Rouse's Markets is voted best grocery store in New Orleans, best grocery store in Baton Rouge, Mississippi, Gulf Coast, Thibodaux, Houma, Hammond, Lake Charles, Mobile, year after year. Thank you for choosing us best grocery store on the Gulf Coast. Number one. Thank you.
Thank you.
The number one grocery store
In Mississippi, Alabama,
Louisiana. 1 million customers a week can't be wrong. Welcome to Rouse's.
The NewOrleans.Football show is proudly presented by PJ's Coffee. PJ's Coffee has some of the best drinks that you can find. They have locations all over the city. They have pastries and everything else you need to get your day started. So go check them out. NewOrleans.Football is proudly sponsored by Urban South Brewery, the makers of Paradise Park Lager. I love supporting local breweries, and when looking for a refreshing, easy drinking beer, I always recommend Paradise Park. In fact, I think it might be the best game day beer out there. If you want something a little lighter, try Paradise Light. It's everything I love about Paradise Park with just 96 calories and 2.6 carbs. And if you're looking for a family-friendly place to watch the game, I'd recommend Urban South's Tap Room in the Lower Garden District. They've got 15 TVs, 30 unique beers on tap, and mouth-watering urban smash burgers. The whole family will want to make Urban South their new living room because at Urban South, they take laid back seriously. Looking for the best insurance coverage at the lowest price? Look no further than Chabert Insurance, the Earhart Agency. They are a local independent insurance agency right here in New Orleans, specializing in home, flood, and auto insurance. Their agents are born and raised in the area and understand our community's unique needs and the homeowners insurance crisis our residents are currently in. At Chabert Insurance, the Earhart Agency, their dedicated team will shop every available carrier in the market, ensuring you get the most comprehensive coverage at the lowest possible price. They know your time is valuable, which is why they work diligently to provide you with the quotes as soon as possible. Why settle for less when you can have the best? Trust Chabert Insurance, the Earhart Agency, to protect what matters most to you. I do. I've been a client of theirs since 2021. When we couldn't find someone to insure our house because of the big oak tree growing over top, Chabert worked until they found someone that would work with us and give us the protection that we need to feel safe in our new home. Call them today at 504-326-6526 or visit them online at Protected by Chabert. That's 504-326-6526. Chabert Insurance, the Earhart Agency, your local insurance experts. Hardhide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey is an 86 proof blend of aged wheat bourbon, American light whiskey, and fresh Ponchatoula strawberries. Blended in New Orleans, it is not for the thin-skinned. Look for it in your favorite stores, bars, and restaurants. NewOrleans.Football is proud to be sponsored by Firehouse Subs. Make sure you check out their location on Veterans Boulevard. Attention Saints fans, don't let pests and termites invade your home field. Trust the team at Red Pest Solutions to tackle those unwelcome visitors. Call the Red Man today for unbeatable pest and termite control. Score peace with no pest. Visit redpest.com, REDDPEST.com. All right, let's get into the show. Welcome back to the Ochsner Health Podcast Studio. I'm Nick Underhill here with Mike Triplett and Brandon Thomas. A lot to talk about today, guys. Where you want to start?
It's a new day. It's a new day in the city, man. Since last time y'all talked on Sunday, a lot of things have changed with the Saints organization. So let's get into our first topic presented by Urban South. What ultimately led to the decision for the Saints to fire Dennis Allen?
I think 7 losses in a row was kind of
I
what
think
did
that
it.
had something to do with it. No, look, it was 6 losses in a row, and then it was losing to Carolina. How many did that count for? 6 more? Was that like double? Like, I think the Carolina loss was like equal to the 6 losses previous before.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think they just couldn't do anything right. I mean, obviously they were super injured and that played a part, but then you get healthy and you can't beat Carolina. That's the final straw at that point. And they were unable to just kind of overcome the stuff they were working against. And at a certain point, you got to find a way to win a game, and they couldn't find a way to win a game. And I think it was just like a culmination of things. Honestly, for me, people are always, hey, like, call for his job, whatever, all that stuff. Like, for me, there were 2 points where if I were the GM of the Saints, I would have fired him. And the second one was Sunday. Like, that was it for me. They lost that game. I was done. I wrote the story. Like, it's over. You got to make a change. It's time to move on. Dennis Allen didn't work. The other time I would have fired him, and I'm still outraged by this, and I don't think enough people were. Like, if you go back and you look at our show from after this game, like, I'm freaking out about it, and everybody's looking at me like I'm kind of nuts. It was the Jamal Williams run. That was, to me, full-on mutiny from the team. They defied their coach. They ran the ball. They stood in support of Jameis Winston. After that, they tweeted about it. They posted on social media. And to me, that was like, you have to fire him. It's absolutely over. And lo and behold, like, hey, it's not that big of a deal. I don't know why everybody was freaking out. Like, all right, but James Hurst then puts out a video on Monday saying we couldn't believe he didn't get fired. Like, we're sitting in the locker room. Mickey Loomis says he's coming down to talk to us. We think he's going to fire him. And they come in and they just kind of like stand against us. And he's like, the right way to do it, and I think I made the same exact point, was you go to the podium and you say, F the Falcons, whatever, stop us if you can't do it. And then you walk in the locker room and say, F the team, F you guys, listen to me, and you tear them out. But to me, that was the only other time I would have fired him. I was on the brink at one point, and then they won 4 or 5. But then that was the other time where I was like, I cannot believe they're still doing this. But they brought it back. To DA's credit, I think he fixed a lot of stuff behind the scenes that I had big issues with. I thought his messaging this year was a lot better. It wasn't, a year ago, every time after a loss, it was kind of like, well, our leaders, well, our team, well, our execution. And there was still some of that, but it wasn't as much. It didn't feel like Derek Carr had one set of
rules.
I don't even know, standards, one set of. It was just nothing was ever Derek Carr's fault last year. This year, some stuff was Derek Carr's fault. Kind of got thrown under the bus under the last game a little bit, even saying he was like rusty or whatever. But, it just didn't work though. And then they lost 7, and I feel like the weight of everything fell on it. And, I was hearing stuff from a lot of players about how, things were going wrong and how they fell apart. And it was, how it wasn't working, how they were frustrated, how the locker room was lost. And, I got a story on the site detailing like a lot of things that happened behind the scenes that led to that. I'm not going to give those away on here. If you're signed up to the site, you read them. If you aren't signed up to the site, do it. But, there was a lot that just went wrong, and it was just too much. Like, at a certain point, it was just too much.
A couple of things. First of all, the Week 18 game last year, it's interesting. I did not think the play itself was the act of mutiny at the time. Like, I understood how Jameis is like, hey, let's get him a touchdown, and the guys in the huddle, like, I didn't think they were all like, let's do this to Dennis Allen. Like, I think they were getting him a touchdown. But you're absolutely right that the mutiny came when he didn't stand by them. That was almost the worst.
I think it's
the
both,
worst
though.
Occurrence. Yeah,
because you don't give a shit what your coach thinks at that point.
Yeah.
You don't care. You're standing against them. I mean, there's no.
Yeah.
There's no, like, if the coach says don't do this and you're saying, you know what, F him, we're doing it, that's mutiny. That's the start of a mutiny. That's daring him to do something.
But look, the phrase we used a lot last year, and that was the best example of it, was there's like a substitute teacher vibe around him all the time, like the respect level of he's an authority figure, and we'll get our homework done, and we'll take the test, but we all know what it means when there's a substitute teacher in the room. You don't think there's the same level of respect, the same level of ramifications. The other phrase we've used that I think was always perfect with Dennis Allen is he's a win with coach, but not a win because of coach. So I pointed this out on Twitter. I think a lot of people took it as a defense of Mickey Loomis or Dennis Allen. I didn't mean it to. Very clear from Mickey Loomis's comments that he didn't want this to be the decision. I don't know if it was completely against his will or if it's something he reluctantly reached the conclusion of doing, but he pointed to the injuries again. He said he's a fantastic coach, and there were a bunch of injuries. But the end of that statement, he said, The circumstances got to the point, and we haven't been able to overcome them, and that puts pressure and stress on the organization. Ultimately, it was cause for a change. Dennis Allen has proven over the last 3 years he's been dealt a horrible hand. I mean, Drew Brees retired, Sean Payton left, the salary cap hit this team, their roster wasn't as good anymore, injuries hit this team. They felt like a 500 type of team, and they needed a coach to lift them above 500. He couldn't. He could not overcome the circumstances. He did not make this team better than their roster. He did not make this team better than their injuries. And when that avalanche hit, he had no answers to get them out of it, and it was just getting worse. So that doesn't mean that he couldn't have had success if he coached this team in the right era or with the right roster or with the right health, but he could not overcome these circumstances. And that happened multiple years in a row. So I get it.
I got one more point to make on the Week 18 though. Like in if you are at the goal line and your coach calls for a kneel down and you run a fake kneel down and score a touchdown, you are saying, F him, we're putting all the pressure on him. He has to answer for this. We're going to make it look like he called it. That is maybe the greatest example of mutiny I could ever think of. That's not just like going in the huddle and being like, no, I called a different play. Like that's like putting your finger in his eye and being like, we're doing this to you. Like now you have to answer for it. And you're sending a message upstairs. Like that to me says, and I'm just interpreting it, like that to me says, we did this thing the whole year. We told you guys the whole year we're playing for each other. We're going to keep playing hard. We're not going to quit. The easiest way to get him fired would have been to quit on the field. But it's saying we got to the last play of the season and now we're throwing our middle finger up at him. And that's what it said to me. And the James Hurst video kind of alludes to like the idea that they just didn't give a shit. Like they were just doing whatever they wanted. And at that point, DA has to answer for it. And he handled it. I understand him not wanting that on his resume. I understand DA's response, but in that situation, I feel like you have to protect your guys and then you go cuss them out. And, Sean just did the same thing to Denver. And it wasn't that, but it was just like, stop us from scoring. Like if you don't want to, I think if you do that, that's an easy way to kind of endear yourself to the team, and then also show
huge opportunity,
and then also show them that you aren't going to take nothing because you're going to chew them out for it. And I think that would have earned a lot of respect, and I think it would have went a long way. I really do.
We'll get back to the Week 18 win against the Falcons a little bit later, but who ultimately, Mike, you alluded to it a little bit, who ultimately made the decision? You can tell from the official statement from the team, some of the comments yesterday on the radio, that Mickey Loomis didn't want Dennis Allen to go right now. So who ultimately did it come down to?
There's two things here. Well, there's one thing here. Like it was Gail Benson's decision. And again, I detailed this in a story. Won't give it all away, but like she went and met with players last week before this game, and the decision was. I was like the way I initially heard this, and I didn't believe it because of the way I heard it, was that the decision was made to fire him, win or lose. And I wouldn't say that right now unless I just read Albert Breer like report the same thing, and I had heard that. And I dismissed it. I was like, there is no way they would make the decision to fire him if they win this game. Like, he wins this game and you're firing him on Monday. But that's how, like, I believe that was the decision. And if they win the game, does that feeling change it? Possibly. Like, you could win the game and then say, well, all right, they won. I'm not going to do this on Monday. But, like, on, like, Friday, like, I think, like, that was the thought process. Now, a lot of stuff has to happen for that follow through to come through. But like I had heard it said like that, and I was like, there is no way, like that is not actually how they were talking about it. And then like Breer heard the same thing, like the best reporter in the league. So I think that's what the thinking was in the building. But yeah, I think it was spearheaded by her, absolutely. And I do believe that Mickey would have got to the point, and I believe that Mickey would have done it like at the end of the season if it was determined this had not worked. I don't think Mickey was afraid of firing him. I think he would have did it. I think that it was probably closer to the point like last year. Like the thought was probably in his head at some point last year, and then they turned it around. Like if they hadn't turned it around, I think Mickey would have done it last year. I disagree with the thought process on the Week 18 game, but whatever. Like he turned it around, whatever. Like you wanted to give him more life. I get it. We would have differed there, but I'm not killing him for that. Like saying, hey, I'm going to figure it out with this guy. But I do think at the end of the season, he would have did it. But I just don't think, and we haven't talked to him, so I don't know. I haven't been able to ask him the question, like what he actually thought about this. So I'm not trying to like speak for him, but in previous conversations, talking to him, reporting, all that stuff like that, I just think it's his firm belief that firing a coach in season is not something that philosophically he agrees with. But that doesn't mean that he never would have fired him. I truly think at the end of this year, had it not turned around, I think he would have fired him.
And also, just because of the circumstances, I mean, we said this a bunch of times. I think Mickey Loomis saw excuses for the rock bottom stretch of the 4 losses with Derek Carr starting in Kansas City and Spencer Rattler starting the 3 games after that. And he was willing to be like, all right, let's see what the next 9 weeks looks like. If things look better, then maybe he's not going to be like. I think he wanted more time to see how Dennis Allen did with the roster back healthy. But losing in Carolina, like maybe he would been more strongly against it if they beat Carolina, like you said. I don't know, but losing to Carolina just sort of took all the defense arguments off the table. Like you couldn't really stand on the table to keep Dennis Allen after they lost in Carolina.
Like Nick said earlier, he has an article on the website detailing how kind of far gone the locker room was and what was happening in there. But like I said, we're going to go back to that Week 18 win against the Falcons and the mutiny play at the end. The person who was barking at the end was Darren Rizzi, and that'll take us into our next segment presented by Shawbear Shirts, the Earhart Agency. What will the next 8 weeks look like under Darren Rizzi?
Probably not much different, but I'm excited to see it. Like when you fire your coach.
What'd you call it, Rizball?
Rizzi Ball. Yeah.
Rizzi Ball,
Rizzi Ball, yeah.
Merry Rizmas.
I'm excited to see it. Like I think he's a great leader. I think he's a great leader. I think the roster just kind of is what it is. Like when you got a new coach, but Cedric Wilson and Equimania St. Brown and Valdez Scantling and Mason Tipton are your receivers this weekend. So, I mean, there's only so much change that can occur. Your roster's still the same, but I'm excited to see it. I think he's going to be a great leader. I think he's going to have people energized. I think they're going to end up winning some games that maybe they wouldn't have won otherwise. I think it's going to be energizing. I think there's going to be a level of accountability, and I think this gentleman is going to be trying to win a job over these next 8 games. So I don't think that any detail is going to go lightly. I think he's going to fight hard to try to do it.
Yeah, I think he's also got like that credibility throughout the room. I mean, it's amazing the way they talked about him in Miami when he interviewed for their job. I mean, like the players really like him, rally around him. Like I actually think you're going to get that like 1 week bump at the very least. Like there's some things this team can't overcome, but I think this is going to be really energizing. I absolutely do. But look, I mean, whether you agree with Mickey Loomis's patience with Dennis Allen or not, this team has an overwhelming amount of things stacked against them, including the talent on the roster and the talent that's been taken away because of injuries, the talent that was just taken away when they traded Marshon Lattimore away. So it's not just a matter of what mood you get the players in. It's
the thing I'm most excited about this change is like we can actually talk about the stuff that's wrong with this team without it coming off like we get it. Like DA wasn't doing a good job and he needed to go and he's gone now. But like now we can actually talk about what has to happen to go forward. And I'm incredibly grateful that we get to have normal conversations now where we don't have to be like, look, I'm not making any excuse here, but like they don't have 7 starters on offense. Like that really does matter. Like, it doesn't have to be this like thing. And then you go read the YouTube things and you're like, like I think he's doing a terrible job, but they're down 7. You guys are making excuses. Like, no, we are. Like, dude, they're down 7 guys. Like, I'm very excited to be able to just kind of have like a normal conversation right now about the state of the team.
A little background on Rizzi is a big East Coast guy, huge East Coast guy. He's barely this might be the furthest west he's been out of the East Coast. You saw last year against the Giants, he wore the high school rivalry shirt because
that was awesome.
Tommy DeVito went to the rival high school. He was the head coach at New Haven. He spent some time at Rutgers. I was looking yesterday. He actually was a part of the recruitment and stuff of the McCourty twins when they went to Rutgers and stuff like that. So it's a guy that knows people more or less. You can tell from the way Tyron and Foster came in the other day that they were talking about, Riz he's saying, hey, this is what it is. We got to try to get ourselves out of this and continue to fight. So I'm excited about the Rizzi.
He'll cuss people out too. Like he's animated and he has their back, but he's going to chew them out at the same time when they deserve to be chewed out. Like the level of accountability, I think, is really high with him. I think he was smart in some of the stuff he said immediately. Like, he's dismissing the injuries and. There's not going to be any excuses for anything that happens going forward with him. And, I think he kind of set the stage for that. Albert Breer reported that one of the first things he did is went in there and rearranged the locker room, which I think is a really good idea. And I'm surprised they never did it before. Like, so you used to go in there and it was by position group. So all your DBs were together, all your offensive line, D line, quarterbacks, receivers, running backs, whatever, down the list. Then during COVID, they changed it up, so it was kind of like nobody was near each other.
Everybody's sick that plays the same position.
So if you caught it, like nobody was catching it. And they just never went back to it. And
they slowly did. The funniest thing about it was every time they would sign a new player, they'd put him right next to someone at his position. So it's reached the point now where it's like 50% position groups. Yeah. It's like DB, offensive lineman. Like it's just random now.
Yeah, it just wasn't ever going to get back though. And like I think that stuff matters. Like Eric McCoy's down here in one corner, and Trevor Penning's like way over here. And just naturally, if they're by each other, there's going to be more conversation. Yep. And now Trevor Penning can ask Eric McCoy like how to do something, but instead it's like Trevor Penning, Chris Olave. Like why? Like what's happening here? Yep. And then there's Kendre Miller over on this side, and there's Alvin Kamara next to Blake Grupe and Big Saunders. Like that isn't helping. Kendre talk about how do you pick up this blitz or whatever. Like so, I just think it's not the most conducive thing. Willie Gay's all the way across the room away from Demario Davis, who's like 4 lockers away from Pete Werner, who's next to the quarterback. So like, when are the linebackers ever talking to each other? Like, it's just not, just obviously it's a pain in the ass to unload every locker and put them all together. Yeah. But like, that's a detail that probably matters. And this is kind of some of the stuff that wasn't happening, the last couple of years. And, granted it's hard, but I think, figuring it out, like, is it a major thing? Does it make a major change? No, but like it's a better way of doing it.
Right. And then all those small things start to pile up. It shows you, like he went in there and said, he's like, we're going to evaluate and reevaluate everything. You know what I mean? And you're seeing it just off the rip. And another thing about Rizzi too, during, I think it was Foster, he was talking about one of the things that he didn't want to see happen is the clicking up in the locker room and different things like that. So all that stuff is important for the culture going forward.
Even going back to like Tyron is nowhere near to Jordan Howden, who's nowhere near Will Harris. Like it's a triangle across the room. Like those are your starting safeties. Right. Like when are they talking to each other in the locker room? Like granted, they're in meeting rooms and all that, but like it just helps. It just helps having them together.
Let's take a look. Let's go back and take a look at the final 8 games of the season.
50-yard plays, like talking's good.
What you think they're gonna? You think Rizzi will be able to figure out how to stop 50-yard plays?
I don't know.
That's crazy. Crazy it happened again. Anyway.
Let's get into our next segment and see, is Rizzi, does he have a legitimate shot at being the head coach long term? And who would you want to see to be the long term head coach starting in 2025?
Go ahead.
I wrote right away after after it happened that it feels like Aaron Glenn is a decisive front runner to me for a few reasons. It's funny, 2 years ago when everyone wanted to fire DA in his first year, at the time I said the only way I would consider it is if you're just bringing in an entirely new offense. I thought like a Shane Steichen type or something. He was a hot name at the time, and you can revamp your offense because they need to revamp their offense so bad. I think what they need to do now more than anything is culture. Like who's going to set the direction of this team? Who is going to be the voice, the face, the personality of this team? I think that should be number one over what kind of offense do they run, what kind of defense do they run. It's the culture they need to reset in this team. So, of course, you do consider the names like Mike Vrabel, Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, maybe John Gruden. I'm not as excited about that. But, like those culture builders, a lot of those guys are a lot older. A lot of those guys would want to have their own GM or be the GM themselves. So I don't know if the Saints will look at it that way, but I think they should absolutely consider that. Aaron Glenn, meanwhile, I think you'd get some of that. I think he would get the credit for being part of what's the model that every team would want to follow right now, Detroit, getting any piece of what's going on in Detroit. And I think Aaron Glenn does come across as a leader of men, a Parcells disciple, a Peyton disciple, now a Dan Campbell disciple. I think you'd get that culture-building leader of men quality along with the familiarity of this organization, probably good relationships, wide respect within this organization. Not to mention the fact that he finished, I think, a close second to Dennis Allen when they did this just 3 years ago.
I don't think I'll have a super strong take on who they hire this time. Aaron Glenn, like, I'm not against it.
No,
But,
yeah,
like,
that's more of a prediction, I guess.
My initial like gut on it, just if you ask me what I think about that, like, I would like to do something different.
Yeah,
Like,
he's too much of the same.
It feels like the same thing, but he might be a great coach, and I'm not against it. And the reason I'm just not going to have a strong take on it, because the last time they did this, like, I strongly believe that preserving the culture, going with DA and all that made sense. Like, I thought it made a lot of sense. Like, it didn't feel like they were that far off. It felt like it could have worked. It felt like it should have worked. Obviously everybody involved in this thing underestimated what it was going to take to keep it going the same way. But looking at it, it made a ton of sense to me. So, and like, I really believed in it. And obviously it was super wrong. Like, terrible analysis, a stupid thought. Like, we're sitting here right now talking about it because, like, that was it just didn't work. So, what I've come to realize is that you kind of got to put people in these jobs to find out if they're good or not. And it's, you do everything, you look at the resume and you think, okay, cool, like, this is going to be the right guy, but anybody who's sitting here like, I never wanted DA, well, the candidate you were probably talking about turned out to be a shitty coach too, because, like, almost everybody that they interviewed has not gone anywhere, and it hasn't worked, and we were all kind of wrong about this, but I was the most wrong because I believed in the guy that they picked, and I sat here and, like, said, it should be him, and it was wrong. So the guy that I really feel like they missed out on that offseason, and I don't even know if he was, like, in their mix, like, Kevin O'Connell's, like, the one that you really...
He got hired that year?
I believe so, 22. Like, that's the one that you really, really missed on that year. And I don't remember him being part of their interview process that year. So it wasn't even like he was there. But to me, like, AG might be a great pick. But I would just kind of... If you allow me to pick off a menu, like, I'm probably picking the thing that hasn't touched their plate already, and look, I'm not against
totally
him.
Fair.
I'm not against him at all, though. Like, I love AG as a coach. I think he's really smart. I think he's a great leader of people. But if you just, I just don't, I'm over, like, the whole, like, keep it together type thing. Like, I feel like that's what went wrong last time. And this would be a different keep it together, but it's still kind of like preserving a culture that just feels like it's gone. Like, I like the OC thing because it was completely different from what they did. Like, I think it's just time for something completely different.
Totally fair. And I was doing more of a prediction than like, I'm not saying I'm planting my flag on Aaron Glenn, and that's what I want to see. Yeah, that's more of what I predict they'll do.
If you're asking me to predict too, that would be, if I have to set early betting odds, like, he's the favorite.
Yeah. I don't think it'll be Joe Brady. I saw people setting early betting odds that just planning that, hey, Joe Brady used to coach for the Saints, it's going to be him. That would be pretty shocking to me.
It's way too risky, I think, for them too.
There's other guys who I think are in between the Belichick, Vrabel, Carroll. I think that if Mickey Loomis...
I've heard Vrabel don't want it.
Yeah, which... Yeah, I those don't feel super likely to me, but
I've heard Vrabel's tracking 3 jobs, and the Saints aren't one of them currently.
I think he gets his pick too. Yeah, that's the other thing about Aaron Glenn. He might be the 3rd or 4th choice. There's Ben Johnson in Detroit, who I think could get a choice. Like, Aaron Glenn feels more available too than some of these other guys. But there's a couple, like, second-time head coaches. I think that's a philosophy Mickey Loomis is going to continue to believe in, even though it didn't work out with Dennis Allen. Brian Flores is one that piques my interest. Vance Joseph. Could pluck Sean Payton's defensive coordinator away from him. Piques my interest. So there's other guys that could be, like, second-time head coaches that would come in and know what to do. Like, Dan Quinn is proving in Washington that theory can work. But you're right. To say there's an obvious way and this will work, they miss on head coaches more often than they miss on first-round quarterbacks. So there's no tried-and-true guaranteed formulas out there.
A name you mentioned, B-Flow. I didn't know kind of where he stood in the league, because I know there were some things after Miami where, there were feelings and different things like that. But in Minnesota right now, I mean,
killing it.
They're looking great.
Killing it.
So he would be high on my list on people to see. And like you said with Aaron Glenn, not discounting him at all. He's, earned this shot to be able to get this job, but it's not different.
I'd love an AG hire. Like, honestly, like, in most situations, I think he's a great coach. I really enjoyed covering him. I love being around him. And I wouldn't necessarily hate it here. Like, I'm not saying I would hate it or I would be even against it. Like, it's just, I'm just, like, tired of like, it just feels like you're doing the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's like typically when you fire, like, if you have, like, a player's coach, like, you typically hire a disciplinarian. Like, it's just kind of, and that doesn't mean the next one's going to work. It just kind of feels like, I don't want to feel like you're tapping the same vein. Because, like, if they hire Aaron Glenn, what do we right now? That it's like a familiar guy. He can kind of he can plug in and operate within it. And that might ultimately end up being the absolute best thing for the organization. But it's like, you're asking me 48 hours removed from the last failure that fit the same description. Like, I'm just not going to be like super excited about it in that moment.
Even with DA, like when it was my first year, but his first year as a head coach of the Saints also, there weren't much changes in the locker room, you know what I mean, in terms of the quotes they had around and the graphics and, you know, all that little stuff.
Signs.
Yeah, all of that stuff kind of piles up because it's like, oh, well, this is the same thing. Just a sub is in here teaching the class until the real teacher gets back. So I don't know. We'll see.
Total Maintenance is one of the largest locally owned home and commercial service providers in South Louisiana. They were founded in 1980 and serve the greater New Orleans and Baton Rouge markets. And Total Maintenance wants to show some love to our NOF listeners. They have a membership program that gets you 2 tune-up visits for AC and heating, as well as club membership discounts of 15% on all repairs, half off of all diagnostic charges, and 3-year warranties on most repairs for membership clients. This is usually priced at the low price of $24.95 a month per system, but if you tell Total Maintenance that you found them through NOF, they'll lower the price to $20.95 per month per system for as long as you keep the membership active. It will never increase. Total Maintenance has a tune-up special running this summer for $79, down from the normal price of $179. This is a one-time offer for one system only. They also offer a free diagnostic on second opinions on units deemed to be unrepairable, and they offer free estimates for replacements as well as commercial maintenance programs. Services include AC and heating service and replacement, electrical service, plumbing service, as well as generator service and installation. They are Total Maintenance. Find them at tm-ac.com or give them a call at 504-841-3300, or if you're in the Baton Rouge area, 225-480-1000. Martin Wine and Spirits is home to a selection of hand-picked barrel select bourbon, whiskeys, and much, much more. They are family owned and operated since 1946 and specialize in wine, spirits, gourmet food, gift baskets, catering, and tasting events. They have many locations, so they're never too far away. You can check them out in Metairie, New Orleans, Mandeville, and Baton Rouge, or if it's more convenient, you can always shop online. Whether you're a wine novice or a seasoned collector, you'll enjoy the Martin Wine and Spirit experience.
Score big with Saints Score. Win up to $100,000. Enter the second chance drawings for cool Saints prize packages. Play Saints Score scratch-offs from the lottery.
There's nothing quite like the feeling of stepping into your dream home. At Jefferson Financial Federal Credit Union, we can help make that dream a reality with a team dedicated to you. When you partner with Jefferson Financial, you do so for the life of the loan. Having a single point of contact when questions arise is invaluable. Our experts are here to guide you every step of the way. There's no better time to invest in your future. Apply online at jeffersonfinancial.org. Federally insured by NCUA, Equal Housing Lender.
Whether you are a local New Orleanian or a fan in town for the game, get your pre- and post-game fired up at Aaron Rose. Local chaos and local love for the black and gold. Wake up and live with daily drink specials, mimosas, screwdrivers, Bloody Marys, and hot or frozen Irish coffees, all just $3 or $4 between 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Aaron Rose, half a block from Bourbon Street in the French Quarter, 811 Conti Street.
Welcome to the Queen Casino, the crown jewel of entertainment destinations. From the thrill of gaming, where every spin and deal brings you closer to fortune, to the excitement of sports betting, where you can feel the rush of victory. Our spaces and catering menu are perfect for any event. From business meetings to grand celebrations, immerse yourself in our vibrant atmosphere with live music that keeps the party going all night long. Join us at the Queen Casino. Your royal adventure awaits.
Welcome into the Ochsner Health Podcast Studio here on Veterans Memorial Boulevard. It is now time for our next segment presented by Jefferson Financial Federal Credit Union. The coaching fire / elevation wasn't the only news for the Saints in the last 2 days. Premier cornerback Marshon Lattimore was traded to the Washington Commanders. Kind of what do we feel about the trade?
We're halfway through the show and we're like, oh, by the way, they traded the best player on the team.
Yeah.
It feels I think Nick did a great job of putting this in perspective on the site yesterday, and I don't want to give away his article too much either, but it's in the headline that he tweeted out, which is they felt stuck and now they have a direction. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean this is a positive for the team. 2 years in a row, we all ranked him as the number 1 best player on their roster. And he's only 28 years old. Yeah. And I think he's going to help the Commanders maybe win a playoff game and be in the playoff hunt for years to come. Great trade for them. So in no way does this make the Saints better. But, this is what everyone's been asking for. Stop kicking the can down the road. Catch up on the salary cap. This is how you do it. You stop paying a guy $20 million a year. You get a couple of draft picks. You start getting younger. You start getting cheaper. You eat a lot of dead money next year, so in 2026 you have less dead money. I mean, all these things are a direction. They inadvertently did it with Ryan Ramczyk because he had to retire for health reasons. Like they're ripping the Band-Aid off a little harder now, and they're going to do that at the same time as they hire a new coach. So at the very least, it's a direction. But I mean, we're talking about one of the 10 best players we've ever covered.
Yeah, no, great player, amazing player. Let's aside from all this, I'm excited to see him go to a contender and potentially be energized and just playing. I thought he was playing great, but I always feel like he has more to give. And I don't want to come off like I'm I hate it when someone gets trash walking out the door or whatever like that. But I think it's I think the big part of this story, and I think everybody knows it, and we aren't pulling a curtain off anything by saying that Marshon Lattimore and the Saints were kind of at odds for the last couple of years. Marshon said himself when he came back this season that he had a personal issue with Dennis Allen that he had to work out. And again, that went sour last year. I feel like that was something that DA kind of solved a little bit this year. He was at least on the field for the most part. So that was something that I think was generally okay for the most part. Anytime he gets hurt, the injury in training camp that gets better for for the first practice of week 1, you got to look at that a little suspiciously.
Is he full on the Commander's injury report today?
The thing with him the last 2 years is that you want to know why they were at odds. The team thought he should be on one timeline with injuries, and he thought he should be on another one with injuries. And the team thought he should rehab more in the building, and Marshon thought he should rehab where he wanted to rehab. And those two things kind of work at odds, and it can create contentiousness. And I think it did. And that's why there was a for sale sign on him this offseason. They worked it out with the option bonus so that if you traded him, he went to another team. They ended up getting, a third and a fourth for him. And that was because the Saints had to eat the money. When the other team was going to have to eat the money, they got 0 offers for him this offseason. Nobody put an offer out there for him. And so they were unable to trade him. He was incredibly expensive. Once the price was manageable, he became a tradable asset, and, off he goes. But, I just don't think that for the better part of the last 2 years that there was it was synchronous, between him and the organization. And there wasn't a lot of harmony there. And, once you can envision yourself being without him, once you put the for sale sign on him, once you draft a second rounder, you're kind of already down that road. You're already, once you talk to a divorce lawyer, you're probably going to end up getting divorced. And that was kind of what happened there. So I don't think you're putting that back in the bottle, and it just didn't get there. And I mean, there were some other things, there were a couple things along the way that you kind of catch rumors of, and you're like, oh man, this is definitely over. And, it wasn't until it's funny that once DA goes, he goes. It was just kind of,
I know,
they were kind of already done with him though, I think. So in the sense of being willing to live without him, they prepped for it, and then it became the best thing for the team. You're starting this rebuild. You got to clean your cap. You're getting 2 pretty good assets in the draft if you hit on them. It was just something that I feel like had come to a head and had to be done.
Yeah, when you say prepped for it, obviously drafting Kool-Aid McKinstry in the second round, and I think they've come to think even more so that Alontae Taylor is one of the best players on the roster. So that is a position where they can absorb it a little bit.
Even you talk about over the summer and you're not pulling back any curtains. A quiet media guy in a certain sense is liking things about him linked to the Texans and different things like that. So it never was a hidden thing of, oh, I wonder if Marshon really doesn't want to be here or doesn't want to play under DA and stuff like that. So it was pretty loud.
It's kind of funny that he ended up with the 2024 version of the Texans. They're the hot young team with the number 2 pick in the draft quarterback. So that's what he wanted to join in the offseason. Look, he's got the new version.
We'd be remiss though to not point out what he really meant to this organization. He's one of the best defensive talented, most talented players that they've had on defense ever. Like maybe their best corner ever. I mean, he just he changed everything at that position. He helped set a standard, and I think he showed a lot of people like what a truly elite cornerback is. Like he was different. He was different.
He came into the league after the whole island trend was over, but he had an island. Like him versus Mike Evans was legendary. People weren't throwing that lat. Like it just wasn't happening. He was locked down lat. That's what he was since he came in.
No, incredible player. And look, I mean, he changed the course of history in 2017. I mean, obviously, they should have drafted Pat Mahomes, but because they drafted Lattimore and rescued that defense, it like prolonged Drew Brees' career around here for a few years.
Yeah, I mean, the shortening Drew's career with Mahomes might have been.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you'd redo that one if you could.
You still would.
Let's get into the weeds a little bit about the cap ramifications of trading Lattimore and the different things like that.
You eat it all now. It's bad. Next year, because now all the dead money that was left on his deal, I have this written up. I'll read it exactly. So here's the difference between what happens. This is what his numbers were scheduled to be: 31.4 next year, 28.6 the year after, 8.2 the year after. So for the next 3 years, he was going to cost $68.2 million. Now it's 31.7 next year, almost the exact same number. You don't really save money in 2025. And then off the books. So, like, you eat it all next year, and then he's off the books. So it doesn't super help you in 2025. It helps you long term. But you can't do this with everybody because, and as a matter of fact, this is going to come up in the Martin's question. You do this with one or two more guys, and you're done. Like, the dead money paralyzes you so much you can't make any other moves. But with him, it's taking your medicine in 2025. Being done with it in 2026.
They're going to have to hit on them draft picks. I mean, they really do. Because there isn't going to be a lot of money to sign anyone. Nope. They're going to have about $60 million in dead money as it stands now. Probably more
to come.
Yeah. I mean, so they have to hit on them picks. If you hit on them picks, you can get better. Like, you can get better in a hurry.
Better
if you
and
hit
cheaper.
On your picks.
That's the only way to get better.
Yeah, you aren't buying your way out of this in 25. Like, there isn't going to be a spending spree. They probably don't sign. They're signing Lonnie Johnsons and. I
wonder if Adebo is the new Lonnie. I mean, I wonder what Adebo costs. I think this makes it more likely you bring Adebo back, and I think Adebo's injury makes it more likely you can afford to bring Adebo back, but you're not paying him $10 million.
Yeah. Let's get into. I mean, we're staying on that same vein. Let's get into our next segment presented by Aaron Rose. Does the firing of Dennis Allen and the trading of Marshon Lattimore mark the beginning of the rebuild? I know you said it earlier, kicking the can. Is this the marker of, hey, this is when it started?
Yes, but I think the definition of rebuild here is different than teardown. I don't think we see a complete teardown. Okay. I don't think we ever see getting rid of everybody. I don't think that there's any intent of getting rid of Derek Carr. I don't think that there's an intent of you aren't trading everybody for bad picks. They had other offers yesterday. None of them are realistic. They traded Marshon because it was a strong competitive one. It isn't a fire sale. It isn't. Everybody's going. I think they're trying to hold on to what they have and build around it, because whether you get rid of everybody or you keep some guys, at the end of the day, the only way to get better is to draft well. And if you draft well, you're back. Yeah. If you don't have anybody and you draft well, you need to draft well a few times to get back. So they just aren't. It isn't ever going to be, as long as this regime is empowered. The thought process is never going to become the Carolina Panthers and try to find your way back up from that. They're just never going to tear it all the way down like that.
You 100% cannot afford, the math wouldn't work. I mean, you can get Carr to play ball with you. There's some creative ways, but you can't just say Derek Carr, Cam Jordan, Taysom Hill, Eric McCoy, DeMario Davis, Cesar Ruiz, Carl Granson, they're all gone. You couldn't even do that if you wanted to. They wouldn't want to, so it's a moot point. But Carr is interesting. I mean, it would really hurt, or you'd have to get really creative. But I think the direction of the team, the philosophy of the next head coach will come into play. That is a major decision. I don't think it's their intent to get rid of Derek Carr. But first of all, do they keep losing and have a top 3 pick? Then you're probably not paying Carr $40 million. Does the next head coach like the idea of drafting and get, Sean Payton got into Denver, couldn't wait to get rid of Russell Wilson. So I think whether they're tearing it down or not is big on how much do they want to keep Derek Carr.
Martin's question of the day. Martin's is home to a wide selection of hand-picked barrels like bourbon, whiskeys, and more. Martin's so much more than just wine. The question is there any way to get off of Carr's contract after the season and take a cap hit, or will he be on the team in 2025?
So I'm writing a story about this today. By the time a lot of people are watching this, the story will be up. Yes, you could. I mean, it's unbelievably difficult because he is the biggest way to restructure a contract and kick the can down the road, save the money that they just lost with Lattimore. They're going to start next year $60 million over the cap. You would have to, if you like just plain cut him, traded him, you'd hit $30 million in just, or you'd hit over $50 million in dead money just next year on him. Yeah. You would literally have to like restructure every other contract on the entire roster and then not pay anybody. You couldn't even like re-sign Marshon Lattimore. I mean, like the math that would like work out to like bare bones. Now, we've seen them do this before on a smaller scale, and I imagine this is what they would do if they want to cut Derek Carr. They would probably give him his $10 million roster bonus, take the offset clause out of it, and ask him to reduce his salary to the league minimum so they could cut him after June 1st. They would probably work out something creative like that. If there's a will, there's a way. It could be
Why would
done.
he want to do that, though?
I'm saying if they give him $10 million as a incentive.
Like, how's he going to get paid if he does that? Like, that's
right.
You're waiting so long, and then you have no market.
Right. But I'm saying if they're determined to cut him, they would probably be like, we're cutting you either way. This could be really hard for us to work out, but we'll do it.
I understand what you're saying, but
you'll give us a cheat code.
In the real world, I don't think he does it, and we already saw him say F the Raiders when they're trying to get rid of him.
You're right.
But like, if he waits until June 1st, there's nobody even to like bid against each other.
Well, he wouldn't have to wait until June 1st. They would call it a June 1st cut. He would get cut on March 1st. Yeah.
I don't see him doing it.
Yeah, he probably not.
And if you're like, if it's like that obvious of like would the PA allow that?
Yeah, if they're cutting him, I mean, they'd
allow him to like cheat his contract and do the offsets and. I mean, I think that sets a really bad precedent. Like, would they? I don't know. Like, then all of a sudden, like none of this stuff matters. I don't know if that's like a feasible actual. Like,
I mean,
the only way to make
it's what they did with Michael Thomas on the way out.
Yeah, but like Mike,
they gave him a $1 million.
But Mike had to wait until June 2nd to actually get cut.
No, he was cut on March 1st.
He was
March 15th.
The story was they're going to cut him on June 2nd or whatever. Like, wasn't it? Like he actually
it's
like in Drew, like
a,
when you do the retirement, like he actually like you got to like wait and act like it's a real thing.
He was on their books until June 2nd, but he was free to sign with other teams on March 15th.
He was free to sign.
You're allowed
on March
to do that
15th?
with two players a year.
I thought they played it.
No, he was a free agent on March 15th.
All right. Well, I mean, I don't see Derek doing it regardless.
Like,
right. I don't
it's
see
very
him.
possible. It becomes very difficult. So, yeah, I mean, if you're doing it against Derek Carr's will, then you have to restructure everybody else on your deal, on your entire contract. Basically like stretch every last dollar you can out of the team and not sign anybody. So it would become very difficult. Yeah, absolutely.
That'll do it for this edition of NewOrleans.Football. As Nick said earlier, it's time for Rizzi Ball. So we're going to see what this new era looks like. Overtime is next. Catch you next time.